WNST. I mean, sometimes when we say Kansas, you think, I don't know, like Peyton Manning and Omaha, but I think Point of No Return and Leftover Church. Just back when I gave, was it a penny or was it $1 to get the 10 8-tracks? Leftoverture was one of mine, as was Point of No Return, and that's no with the K-N-O-W. Kansas will be performing that album as well as some other hits down at the Modell Lyric, and many of you know the Modell Lyric, my favorite place to see a show. Saw Steely down there a couple weeks ago. We got John Mellencamp coming, Joe Bonamassa, but Kansas will be there on Saturday the 24th, and joining us now, the I want to say new lead singer, but it's not new anymore. He is the lead singer of the band Kansas, formerly was Shooting Star, and one-time truck driver from Chicago, Illinois, and I'm sure a guy that probably had some Kansas 8-tracks back in his day. We welcome Ronnie Platt onto the program. Ronnie, first off, man, welcome in. It's great to have you aboard, my friend.
Nestor, thank you so much. I got to tell you, you just gave me a flashback. Do you remember, what was the name of that company that said, you know,
Columbia House, wasn't that it, right?
Columbia House, you bought your first 8-track or cassette for a penny, but then you had to, you had to commit to buying like 3,000 more.
Well, you had to check a box that said, are you rock, jazz, or country? And somehow I clicked the jazz box. So like every month, like a Tito Puente, 8-track would show up or something. It was crazy, man. When all I really wanted was like some Kansas and maybe a little Ted Nugent and Barry Manilow mixed in there during the disco era. But, for where you are and to say you're the new singer in the band and stuff, anybody can Google it. And you have this famous background as a truck driver and Shooting Star. And a lot of the stuff that I saw was from a couple of years ago when you just joined the band. You're now like in the band and you're out on the road doing this and sort of living the dream. Just bring us up to date. I mean, you're in San Antonio today. You're going to be in Baltimore with us soon. This must be like winning the lottery, right?
Nestor, it's what I've said many, many times. Not only have I won the lottery for getting the job in Kansas, but Kansas putting out a new studio album while I've been in the band, having a big hand in writing that album, putting out a live album, and just everything that has happened over the past now more than 4 years. Can I still say I'm the new guy? 4 years, even though guitar player extraordinaire Zach Risby has joined after me and Dave Mannion. Dave Mannion and myself, we joined, in 2014, and Zach in 2015. So it's so funny, Billy Greer, bass player, who's been with the band now 35 years. It's funny when I see advertisements or something, new bass player Billy Greer, 35 years. So I guess you never lose that title. But it's all good.
Lawrence Gowan's a friend of mine from Styx, and I've known the guys from Styx for 30 years. And Jay Y and I are buddies, and I know you're a Chicago guy, and all the stuff there, Chips Enough, and the Xanders and the Nielsen's and the REO Speedwagons. That whole era and that whole period of Midwestern rock and roll and all that stuff. But Gowan still gets it, and I saw some quotes from you saying that it made you nervous. And he's still the new guy in Styx, but no one realizes he's been in Styx longer than Dennis was in Styx, right? So, there's always that new guy thing. But for people that want to come out and see the show, and they're going to come down to the Modell Lyric, and they've loved Point of No Return like me for 4 decades, back to album or 8-track or whatnot, what's your background with this music? And like everyone else, I guess, cranking it up in Chicago when you're driving around meeting girls in the 80s or whatever, right?
Nestor, I got to tell you, I have a pretty unique world that I lived in back then because, starting in the 70s, my sister's 4 years older than me, and, she would, bring home albums, from the early 70s period, and, she was bringing home stuff, like, my Grand Funk and
Zeppelin, a little Zeppelin, right? Had to be.
A little Zeppelin, a lot of Chicago. I grew up loving the band Chicago. God, so many. But I fell in love with the progressive rock thing. I really fell in love with Kansas. I fell in love with Yes. I fell in love with Genesis. And I got so entwined and that progressive thing, that the 80s came along and these hair bands started coming out. You had the Bon Jovi, you had the Winger, you had Poison, bands like that. And I just totally missed that boat. It just, for some reason, it didn't draw me in like the prog rock stuff did. And while everyone was listening to that, I was still listening and sitting there with my bass and my cheesy little, I think it was $150, wasn't even 88 key piano, plucking things out to Kansas songs and to Genesis songs and Yes songs.
Well, at that point, were you cover banding, or like where were you in 1985 when I was graduating high school, listening to all this stuff? I'm sure you were listening to it too, but you had a whole different life before you joined this rock and roll circuit, right?
I started now outside of having a day gig for 30 years plus. I really started playing. I probably played my first bar gigs in '79. Yes, I was underage, but it was right at that point in Illinois where Illinois had changed the drinking age from 18 to 21, but in Wisconsin it was still 18. So here I am, 18 years old with my band, and here I got some trivia that I'll share with you that not many people know. My first jobbing band that played the bars, my guitar player's name, God rest his soul, he passed away now. My guitar player's name was Steve Walsh.
Wow.
How is that for some underground trivia? But, I started playing bars in '79, so from '82 to '87, I had a real popular prog rock cover band, Chaser. We played the Kansas, Yes, Genesis, Journey, Styx. We were really successful playing all the bars in the '80s. Then from '87 to '90, I was in a band that played all Yes. In the same time, I was in a band called Visionary that we wrote all our own stuff and did original music.
But this was Weekend Warrior. I mean, you had like a real job during the week. This was just
Weekend Warrior stuff.
Yeah.
I was working, 50, 60 hours a week. And at one time, I had 3 working bands going at the same time and still working a full-time job.
Ronnie Platt is our guest. He is the new singer of Kansas, but not really new. He's been in the band 4 years and drove a truck, did a lot of rock and roll. But for this music, and it's interesting because the first time I saw Kansas was when Walsh wasn't in the band. When they were doing Play the Game Tonight, and they were out on the road with Heart. And the early MTV. John Elefante, who was the next door neighbor to my pal Jimmy Schwartz when Jimmy was the Nashville. Living in Nashville as the Tennessee Titans coordinator. So, Elefante was the first time I saw Kansas, and then I saw Walsh, many times after that when he got back into the band down at DAR Constitution Hall and, playing various clubs. And Kansas has been a band that's been touring for forever, in various incarnations. If you've wanted to see the band, there's been lots of different opportunities to do that, right?
I have to tell you, it just warms my heart, and these people come through meet and greet, and they say, Ronnie, this is my 74th time seeing Kansas. Ronnie, this is my 90th time seeing Kansas. Ronnie, this is my 12th time seeing Kansas since you've been in the band. It's quite a testament to the music of Kansas, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. Well, when's the first time you heard Kansas? Like, the experience of being in this band and being invited to be in this band, I would think the first song you heard was Dust in the Wind, maybe Carry On. Depends probably what you were listening to and what AM radio station you had tuned in 1977 or 78, right?
Oh, God. Yeah, back then in Chicago, it was the big 89, WLS, and back then you would hear Carry On Wayward Son by Kansas, then you would hear, a Jackson 5 song,
sure.
And then a Led Zeppelin song.
And then the Bee Gees after that, sure.
Right. It was so diverse back then, but and really I think that's when I fell in love with music.
For you and putting the album together, coming out on this album, and look, I'm a Springsteen fan, and you could pick nights. I saw Steely Dan doing things at the Beacon Theater last week up in New York where you could pick the album you wanted to hear. You want Asia this night, you want Gaucho that night. For you guys doing the same album every night, I know Styx has come out and done that. A lot of bands have done this in recent times. Picking this album and circling this album and making this the centerpiece of what you're doing on this tour.
Well, it worked so good with Left Overture. And it was the 40th anniversary, and when Phil and Keith first started talking about putting Left Overture together, that show, they're like, maybe we'll do 12, 15 shows like this. And Nestor,
a year and a half later,
we did over 80. A year and a half later, over 80. Are you kidding me? And now, Point of No Return, 40th anniversary, Point of No Return. This show is now outsold Left Overture. How cool is that?
Well, I don't think there's any point where you do what you do for a living, and especially you in the I'm still pinching myself phase of this thing at this point in your life, right. that every night you go out, you want to play the music that you like, that gets the fans where they want to be and gives some level of expectation. And certainly for fans going down to the Modell Lyric to see our new friend Ronnie Platt from Kansas do the songs of Point of No Return with the band Kansas. The show is Saturday the 24th. It's down at the Modell Lyric. You can always go to Modell-Lyric to learn more. You can learn more about everything that Kansas does at kansasband.com. And Ronnie is a very available individual out on Facebook, where he's Facebook friends with my pal Stash. So that's pretty cool, too. Yeah, for you guys at this point and coming out and doing this and trying to have fun and getting on the bus and doing all those things that maybe sounded romantic at 25, right? That's a very, very different thing. I found it fascinating in reading up on this, how many bands don't get along and bands break up because of that, and then you have your U2s and your Rushes that sort of stay together forever and never appear in any other way. Liking each other is such an important part of this, right? Like, before you were in a band, you saw all the behind this music and the breakups and all that stuff. It's a brotherhood. You're spending a lot of time together out on the road, right?
It's not only a brotherhood, it is a family, and all the members of Kansas now and past members, we're all friends. We're all part of this collective thing. And this band now, it's so great because when we're not playing music, we're laughing. We just love each other's company. We have a good time all the time. It's just such a pleasure. And for me, the past 4 years have gone by like 4 months, that they really have.
When people ask about the flow chart of the band, can you fill in all the blanks? Did you have to take a quiz at the beginning? Because I'll tell you, I was up late one night, maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, and the rock doc came on, Palladia, in the middle of the night, and I got, enraptured in it, right? And this is how you learn about the history of the Eagles or Tom Petty or any other band. But I got caught up in that. Was that something that became, like, immediately, necessary for you to know a whole lot about the band beyond how to sing the songs and play the music?
I had an unfair advantage because I've been such a huge fan and followed the band so intensely for years and years and years. I knew all the players and who left and who came in and the different eras and the different styles of writing that the band went through. And so to me, it was just common knowledge.
So you're like a historian of the band, right? I mean, at that point, right?
Pretty much.
That's pretty cool, man. Hats off to you. I'm looking forward to seeing the show. We're going to be down there. Maybe have some leftover turkey, maybe some pumpkin pie. I don't know if you're a pumpkin or a mincemeat or an apple pie guy, but I'll find out. Sweet potato, we'll do it all. Kansas, the band, can be found at kansasband.com. Ronnie Platt, that's Platt. You can find him out on Facebook as well, and you'll be finding him on the 24th down at Modell Lyric. Yeah, I guess in the modern era, too, being a new member to the band, to be able to interact with the fan base, knowing that they're coming to the show and that you're not Steve Walsh and they're not expecting that, but they are expecting 2.5 hours of great music, and they want to know a little bit about you. I mean, you weren't on the cover of Circus Magazine back in the 70s. You were buying it like I was, right?
Right. Now I'm just in a circus.
Hey, man, rest your pipes. I know you got a show tonight, tomorrow night, every night in the rock and roll band, and at some point your band will get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I know that's become a political play in a lot of cases, in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of deserving bands, but I was a little shocked to find out Kansas isn't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I go there every year, you know?
Isn't it shocking, and especially when you have guys like Garth Brooks who credit Kansas for getting him into the music business. Really? How does Kansas not be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I just don't understand it.
Well, you're doing your best keeping the flame flickering out there and keeping the band alive, keeping the music alive, and taking the show on the road. So I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in a couple weeks down here on the 24th. I do appreciate you making some time out of your day and telling us your great story. I think everyone's familiar with like Arnel Pineda or people in other bands with Journey and classic rock, and you're the guy in Kansas, and it's nice to know you and spend some time with you, man.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it more than you know.
You got it. Ronnie Platt joining us here. He is the new, not so new singer of the band Kansas. You can check them out down at the Modell Lyric. I want to remind everybody, we got Beach Boys Christmas coming up down at the Modell Lyric, as well as Joe Bonamassa, John Mellencamp. We're doing some comedy with George Lopez. The entire schedule up at modell-lyric.com. There's always magic at the Modell Lyric. Mix a little music in with our sports and our rock and roll. Yeah, we had a little bit of politics earlier in the month as well. I am Nestor. I am a very available individual. You can find me out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Anything you miss, you can find in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. Just download it. Listen when you can, where you want, how you want. It's no static at all. There's my little Steely Dan reference for you. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports and rock and roll.